Mr. Lazy learns his lesson. Mr. Lazy got up, went downstairs, and sat down in his kitchen chair in his kitchen, and peered at the clock on the wall. It was 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. "Bother," said Mr. Lazy, and frowned. Believe it or not, Mr. Lazy had got up an hour earlier than usual. He stretched and yawned, and then went back to bed. An hour later, at 3 o'clock, Mr. Lazy got up again, went downstairs, sat in his kitchen chair in his kitchen, and peered at the clock. "That's better," he said to himself. He yawned and looked at a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. He yawned and looked at a pile of dirty laundry in the laundry basket. He stood up and yawned and looked out of the kitchen window, but he couldn't see anything because the windows were so dirty. So he went to the back door, yawned, and opened it. But he still couldn't see anything. And you know why? I'll tell you. Mr. Lazy couldn't see anything because the grass in his garden was so long and so tall that he couldn't see over it. And why was it so long? Because Mr. Lazy was too lazy to bother cutting it. He was also too lazy to do the washing up and the laundry and clean his windows. In fact, Mr. Lazy was too lazy to do anything but sleep. But as lazy as he was, he knew that something had to be done. He had no clean plates to eat off. He could barely get out of his house, and worst of all, he had no clean sheets to sleep on. He sat down in his chair and yawned and began to think. An hour later, he woke up, and it was then that he had an idea. "I need some help," he said to himself. So he put on his hat and struggled through his long grass to his very squeaky gate and set off in search of help. It was not long before he met somebody. "Hello," said that somebody. "Hello," said Mr. Lazy. "What's your name?" "Mr. Messy," said Mr. Messy. Now, Mr. Lazy had been on the point of asking Mr. Messy to come and help clean his house when a sudden thought struck him. That thought went something like this. If somebody is called Mr. Messy, there is probably a very good reason they are called that, and that reason is probably because they are very messy, which would possibly not make them the best person to ask to clean your house. So, Mr. Lazy said good afternoon to Mr. Messy and went on his way. Further down the road, he met somebody else. This somebody was carrying a pot of paint. "Hello," said Mr. Lazy. "What's your name?" "Mr. Clumsy," said Mr. Clumsy, and promptly fell over and covered himself with paint. Mr. Lazy decided that this Mr. Clumsy was just as clumsy as his name suggested, and anyone that clumsy is not the sort of person you invite into your house to clean up. He would break more plates than he would wash. So Mr. Lazy said goodbye to Mr. Clumsy and continued his search. That afternoon, Mr. Lazy met a lot of people. But for one reason or another, none of them were the sort of person he was looking for. He met Mr. Silly, who was taking his pet worm out for a walk, or rather, a wriggle. He was too silly. Mr. Lazy met little Miss Stubborn, who said no before he'd even had a chance to ask her who she was. She was too stubborn. Mr. Forgetful couldn't remember who he was, and little Miss Chatterbox talked so much that Mr. Lazy decided she would never get any work done. After a while, Mr. Lazy, being the lazy fellow he was, decided that he had walked far enough. By the time he got home, he was exhausted. He had never walked so far. It was then he met somebody else. "Hello," said Mr. Lazy. What's your name?" "Mr. Tidy," said that somebody. Mr. Lazy grinned a happy grin. He thought he had found just the person he'd been looking for all afternoon. But he was wrong. Very, very, very wrong. Just about as wrong as that somebody who he asked to clean his house, and who said yes, and who gets everything wrong. Even his name. It was Mr. Wrong. And what a mess he made of Mr. Lazy's house. Mind you, it will teach Mr. Lazy a lesson for being so lazy.